Imperium Empires is an upcoming NFT game that is going to be an RTS MMO in space. Just like I was, you may be unfamiliar with this project, but in this episode, I got to sit down with Cliff, the founder and CEO, to ask questions about Imperium Empires. Hopefully this interview provides you with great insight of what's ahead for this play-to-earn game. Well, welcome, Cliff, to the Balthazar interview here. Appreciate you taking the time, and you are part of the project Imperium Empires, which I'm guessing probably not a ton of people have heard about yet. So why don't you just kick us off here today? Tell us a little bit who you are, what is your project about, and what is your role on the team?
Sure. Hey, good. Thanks for having me. So just a quick intro about myself first. I'm the founder and CEO of Imperium Empires. So Imperium Empires is actually a MMO RTS game. Meaning that basically every player they're gonna have their fleet of spaceship, and then they're gonna have these epic space battles with one another in a guild format as well. Because some of our game design actually is modeled after a very popular space MMO title called EVE Online. And we actually had this came up with this whole idea back in mid 2021. Because at that time, I have been a long-term gamer myself. And just seeing how blockchain interacts with games, we think that this is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, because we know that the long-term potential of integrating Web3 with games can solve one of the biggest pain points in games, which is that the players, they spend so much time and money grinding for the asset that they want, but at the end of the day, all those profits actually got taken by the game developer. And at that time, when we came up with the idea of Imperium Empires, we saw that most of the Web3 games out there, they basically just click to earn DeFi farming pools. So we know that in order for the GameFi market to really kind of develop to the next phase, there really needs to be a fun game, like real game developers developing a fun game that attract not only the real farmers in the DeFi world, but also real players that enjoy playing the game and attach to the game, so that it's going to be much more long-term sustainable. Because if you look at a lot of those click-to-earn games, basically later go up in less than 3 months. So that's why we built a very experienced game development team, and then to put that idea into action.
Yeah, I love that story. I mean, I definitely agree with you there. As a gamer that's played for many years, many hours, it's really a bummer when you look back at all that time and you say, well, all that time, all those hours that I put in it or money I put into it, I can't take anything back out, right? And so that's exactly the appeal, right, of these NFT games. And I definitely agree with your take that there's just not a ton of fun ones out there. There's maybe a few you can point to right now, but I really hope that games like Imperium Empires and other ones that we've been interviewing can really come out and really bring up the level of these games, right? So I'm kind of curious from your end, is Imperium Empires, is this going to be a AAA game? Is this going to be an indie game? What's kind of the level here that you guys are looking at as a team?
Yeah, so definitely we aim to build the highest quality as much as possible, because if you look at some of our NFTs that we have sold, so in our Genesis collection, we sold 4 spaceships, and then we have a lot more in the pipeline. All of those spaceships we actually have, we designed it ourselves. We have a full art team that do all the assets from sketches and do these very nice looking 3D models. So we have a huge art team that all of our content, all of our content are original. Because we know that in order for the players to attach value to these NFT assets, it just can't be something that you can just buy all the Unity assets for and all those things, which I know that a lot of our games do. So we put in a lot of hard work to make sure that we can produce really quality title for players to attach sentimental value.
Yeah. Well, so what kind of gamer are you guys looking at? Because I know you mentioned a little bit earlier, it's an RTS, MMO. Is there certain types of games that you'd point to and say, hey, it's kind of inspired by this, or this type of gamer will, really like this game that we're building here?
Yeah, exactly. We're actually targeting the type of players, because we have a very unique concept called Team to Earn, where we're actually targeting players that want to play with other players, perform a guild, and then they actually all of our gameplays actually revolve around guilds. So players, they're going to form a team with other players. And then the game is going to be like there are these different land segments in space. So we're going to have these seasonal tournaments where the players, they actually, for example, we have like a 30-day season, and each guild, the objective in the game is actually to occupy as many of these land sectors as possible. So, for example, the more lucrative and resource-rich sector, there's going to be more guilds and players competing for that. So that time, the different players actually will play different role in terms of fighting with other guilds. So, for example, there can be like cheaper but faster spaceships. They can be pick the role of being a scout and then just going to these different sectors and seeing that which one has strategic value and then which one is also worth attacking as well. So the larger spaceship, more expensive ones, they're going to be the main firepower in terms of fighting the war with other groups. So every player is kind of have a different role that really makes a very vibrant economy when they're like trading with others in terms of what spaceship to use, as well as having that strategic mindset in thinking that which player that should want to deal with. So every guild they're gonna have different vibrant set of different players that taking different roles.
Yeah. So do you see this as being, the game going to facilitate some of the guild part of that? Is each player going to have to find or design their own guild? How is that all going to work?
Yeah, we actually going to have a guild registration and management system where if you want to start a guild and be a guild leader, you can just do it through like web interface, and then you can basically you can just other players will be able to see which guild they're actually recruiting, and then you can also going to specify what kind of players that you're looking for. For example, in your guild you already have like a few players that really heavy firepower, but they're actually looking for players who want to mine more resources for you, upgrade your base or so, then kind of specify your requirements, what kind of guild members that you're looking for. So yeah, we will have a system that facilitates how players form as well as join, forming guilds and joining guilds.
That sounds awesome. I don't know if you've ever played PlanetSide, but that was one of my childhood games growing up. And I know it's a little bit different than RTS because it's a shooter, but I'm picturing that kind of style where you select your team, or in this case, you select your guild. And then back in those days, you could be, the hacker, you could be the pilot, and all of us are coordinating together. Maybe even if we don't know each other, right? Is that we're still working to one goal all together as one team and one unit. And in this case, now earning more because we're doing so, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. I love it. That's really exciting. How about the NFTs of this world? So I'm kind of curious, as I interview these games, what's the purpose for you guys creating an NFT game versus a non-NFT game, especially with this, RTS style? How does that fit specifically within the genre? Because I think for some people, it's really easy to think of, oh, okay, in a shooter like Fortnite or whatever, I can get skins as an NFT, or in an MMO, I can trade my resources in the epic sword that I drop. So that makes sense. So how does these NFTs fit within an RTS?
Yeah, I think the main reason that we're doing that NFT game is actually, as I mentioned before, we really want to return the ownership of the asset to the player. Because especially that we see MMO games, like whether that's space titles like EVE Online or other titles, you can see that a lot of the MMO game players, they actually put in tens of thousands of dollars into the game, or they actually put in thousands of hours grinding for the like spaceship or swords or heroes that they really want to get that sword, putting that time and money required. But at the end of the day, they really got not being able to own the asset or being able to transfer the asset. So the primary goal is actually for us to return the ownership of the asset to the player. But of course, as an RTS title, a lot of because we also think from the perspective that if whenever any kind of Web3 games involve NFT, a lot of the complaints is going to be about, oh, is this going to be something like pay to win games? So the whales, they're going to buy up all the most expensive NFTs, and then they're going to dominate everyone in the game, so it's not going to be fun anymore. But I think in the context of an RTS game, as well as then build or team-based RPG games, there is actually a lot of grand strategies that each team needs to think about in terms of just winning the tournament. So even if you have the most powerful spaceship in the universe, it's actually going to be balanced out by the different roles that each spaceship is going to play. So, say, for example, we have an expensive spaceship, but it's going to be a lot slower than the faster spaceship. So, does that mean that you can just occupy every piece of land sectors in the universe? It's probably not going to be the case because, if you have like 100 or so faster spaceships, you can actually get to other sectors faster than the more expensive or slower ones because they mainly serve the purpose of the firepower rather than scouts. So there just need to be a lot of thinking behind the strategy rather than just buying out everything the most expensive one and dominating the game. So I think the concept of using NFTs, but at the same time not being a completely a pay to win game actually fits very well in the context of an MMORPG.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, and it sounds like it could really fit for this genre. And maybe this is an ignorant question on my end because I haven't played an MMO RTS before, but I'm curious, how does the whole game work if it's an RTS but it's massive online and it's always going? Does that mean I need to play 24/7 to really get the value out of my assets and help my guild win? Am I going to be hurting my team and my guild if I'm not playing a ton, or is there some way to balance that in the game?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We actually thought about that question from game design perspective very carefully as well. So that's why we actually have two different set of games that you can really play in the Imperium Empire series. So we actually have a game that is web and mobile friendly, more focused on the side of resource gathering and mining. So in that web and mobile game, what we do is basically kind of more the PvE side of things, not really participating in this space battle. Probably that's going to take much more of the time you want to do it from the PvP side. So we know that there are basically players out there who really look for the kind of more idle gaming experience. Maybe they want to spend 15 or 30 minutes every day playing the game. It's not like every day they have 4 hours or 8 hours to spare. So that's why we actually going to have a web or mobile game that focus on the resource mining perspective for those players to kind of mine the resources required to upgrade every spaceship or the space of the players, and then they can either use it themselves or just contribute that to sell it to the guild members. But at the same time, they can also kind of enjoy that kind of PvE aspect. Not every player is kind of hyper competitive players that always want to conflict and attack other players, right? So yeah, we do have some other game modes that cater to those kind of non-competitive games. But as for the competitive gamers, they're going to be much more focused on the PvP, our PC and Mac build, because that's going to be the main mode where the battles and then kind of these land sectors optimizations going to happen in the PC.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you get the both aspects of, hey, if you want to be a little more casual, or if maybe you're just someone that's really busy and don't have a ton of time, you can still contribute to your guild. It's not like you're sitting on the sidelines wasting your time, right? It's, hey, you're still contributing versus a player who maybe does want to spend, 4 hours a day or 6 hours a day, and they just have a lot of time they want to pour into this game. And I like the fact that you guys are giving the best of both worlds to each side of the game, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So talk to me a little bit about, let's jump to maybe more of the finance side here. First, let's talk about the blockchain, because I'm interested to see more games now launch on Avalanche. And we had that interview last week. You said you knew a little bit from Jackson and the Cinders team. They're also launching on Avalanche. So I haven't heard a ton of other games outside that and maybe Crobata. So what's the choice for Avalanche? Is there an advantage to you guys? Did you just throw a dart and, randomly land on Avalanche as opposed to other blockchains? What was the decision there?
Yeah. We actually thought really carefully about which chain we build on. And then Avalanche really stand out, I think mainly because of the engagement that we see in its community. Because Avalanche has a really vibrant and supportive ecosystem. Like, for example, we basically know every project, whether that's a DeFi project or GameFi project, doing Avalanche. And we actually have we formed a lot of partnership with them as well. So, for example, we have partnership with Trader Joe and Banky, which are some of the largest DeFi projects I'm doing on Avalanche. And just thinking about how we can integrate some of these DeFi concepts into our game, and so that we can grow the community together. We also going to have a lot of these community events once our alpha game is going to be coming out very soon. So that's one of the main reasons why we approach Avalanche. And then the Avalanche Foundation is also very supportive of GameFi projects, because they know that the future, especially the consumer application of blockchain, definitely games are going to be playing a role. So we are also very surprised about the kind of quality of the GameFi projects building on Avalanche. Because if you look across a lot of other chains, they are just because they had kind of like a first-hand advantage when a lot of the kind of click-to-earn games first start off on other chains. But I think in order to build a serious project that is going to be long-term sustainable, we really believe in the vision of A Labs in terms of really having like a game dedicated chain, putting a lot of resources on it.
So you're saying there's a ton of gaming projects already building on Avalanche, and perhaps I just haven't looked into it. So do you see it as progressing to be one of those top gaming blockchains? Because I think most people, when you talk about gaming blockchains, they would point to BNB or Polygon or Wax or things like that. And, Avalanche is starting to grow, but do you see it as being one of the top ones one day? Or maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe all blockchains are interconnected one day anyways. How do you see these blockchains playing out for gaming in the next maybe year to 2 years?
Yeah, we see that Avalanche is definitely going to be super competitive in being one of the top blockchains dedicated for games, because we see that vision that, for example, vision about subnets where every chain can have their own side chain and use the tokens and the gas tokens. So this is actually going to be super helpful in terms of building a vibrant economy within the game. Because just think about all the potential that you can have by having a DEX and having all the resources traded on the DEX and to facilitate these peer-to-peer exchange of the resources. We even thought about like having like a banking system inside a game where whether that's resources or any type of other assets that the players are looking for, as long as those are not NFTs, then they can actually borrow land, buy or sell from the bank. So it's going to be a really cool concept. And then if you look across the stability of the blockchain, I think Avalanche really stands out. So that I think in the longer term, if you think about bringing more players into the Avalanche GameFi ecosystem, it's also going to be not as difficult compared to other chains. Some of the other chains are not EVM compatible. But Avalanche is EVM compatible, so to kind of bring over the players from, because I think ultimately what gamers are looking for is actually not a dedicated blockchain. As long as they see that there is a quality project out there, this game is fun to play, they're not going to care whether that game is going to be on BNB chain, on Polygon, or Avalanche. So that's why I think ultimately it's really down to the quality of the game building on the blockchain.
Yeah, I think when I look at blockchains, I think the thing that's most important to gamers, as you said, the game is good. It's safe because we've seen now a lot of hacks and other big name games. And, that's a little bit scary, right? If you're looking at, well, I'm buying $100 of NFTs or assets and this could be taken away from me, right? And then third is those dang pesky gas fees, right? Which it sounds like on Avalanche, and especially with the subnets, they shouldn't be as high as some of these other blockchains. So that's a really cool advantage. And I hope that works out well for Imperium. So how about one of the things that struck me in your white paper, you guys wrote most GameFi projects fail to live up to the promises of the Fi part with limited DeFi use except for simple staking, which was really interesting because I've more so lately heard of complaints on, hey, there's so much focus on the DeFi and the game part isn't just fun. So what is the philosophy behind that statement? How are you guys going to change that to add more Fi to the ecosystem? And I'm curious, why should gamers care about this?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So if you look from the perspective of what I call all the GameFi 1.0 projects, they basically just kind of like DeFi mining tools. So some of them, of course, they have some gameplay behind, but I think all of the underlying system of those games are very similar. Like you put down like something like a down payment, buy an NFT, like each NFT is a few $100s, and then they're gonna promise you a return of investment in like 30 days, 60 days. And basically, if you think from the perspective of the APR, it's going to be more than 1,000%. But how on earth is that going to be sustainable? So I think, yeah, at the end of the day, that's what I see the problem of all those old projects are. Whether they have some of them, of course, they have a fully working game. Like you download like an APK and then you get into the game. There are some energy system where you can just pay for it 10 times every day. But ultimately, it's still a DeFi mining tool that you just put in some amount of capital and then you're getting a game token in return. But all those game tokens are hyperinflationary. And so basically your return on investment date is going to be longer and longer because the token price, there is no use of those tokens. Like the supply is only going to grow. So that definitely is not going to work. So that's why I'm saying that a lot of GameFi projects are not really doing that in a proper way. I think what the true finance part is actually to use DeFi to facilitate a vibrant in-game economy. Because any virtual world that has a lot of features in it, any game world, any sophisticated games out there, it's going to have a very complicated economy. You need to think about how to keep all these game assets and game resources, keep the inflation under control. So that's why there are a lot of aspects of DeFi can actually help with that, like trading of those resources, as I mentioned, and then having the players to play different roles in the game. So like I mentioned before, some of the gamers is going to be more focused on the mining side, and the players going to be more focused on the fighting side. But the players, the competitive players who want to fight with other players, they can't really fight without having those resources mined by the players. So every player is going to take a different role, and then like DeFi concept like a DEX actually could be really helpful to facilitate trading of the resources among these different players in the ecosystem.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I like what you're saying there. I'm curious, how does the team think about balancing those two types of audience and players? Because you might have some I've noticed that are really here more for the gameplay and the ownership of NFTs, and so when they get into a game that even if it's fun for them, maybe has that big, USD. Here's like all your assets in crypto and value in this game. And it's just right in your face all the time. So now it's like that's what they're trying to tell you what to think about, even though I'm just here for the entertainment side. And then on the flip side, you have players who are, hey, I'm really here to make an earning or to increase my asset value. And so I do want to know, and I do want to make sure that the game is, heavy into the fi part of the GameFi. So how do you try to think about balancing those two types of players? Because in some ways they can be connected, in other ways they have different goals.
Yeah, exactly. Because one of the ways that we're doing it is actually through really driving down the like a floor price of getting into the game. So look across our marketplace. We have our own NFT marketplace. So the cheapest spaceship that you can get is probably only $2, $3, because we know that the entry barrier is actually one of the biggest problems for a lot of Web3 games, especially because I think the population of crypto native gamers is actually so small compared to like the kind of Web2 gamers. There are basically 3 billion gamers on Earth. So as any Web3 games progress, I mean, a lot of the Web3 games initially they focus very much on the crypto native population. But I think everyone kind of now realizes that this market is probably not the biggest market that we should tap into. So in order to really tap into the Web2 gamer population, you just can't only have like NFTs that are selling for 1 or 2 ETH because the entry barrier, like no Web2 gamer is going to pay that cost. to get into the game. So that's why we want to drive down the entry barrier and make sure that it is a game that everyone plays. Like you're just gonna spend a few dollars, like a few dollars, or like $10, $50 to buy a game on Steam. So yeah, that's one of the solutions that we're thinking about. And of course, in order for our rewards, the rewards supposed to be sustainable, we also thought of a way where the emission of our game tokens actually going to be dynamic. So whether that's our PC or game goals, that's the competitive part, or the kind of casual gamer part that we well built, the rewards actually going to be distributed on a seasonal basis based on a fixed pool. So say, for example, in season 1, we have a pool of rewards like 10,000 tokens, say, for example. And then the reward of the next season is actually going to be based upon certain multiplier of all the reinvestment made by the players in the previous season. So, say, for example, out of those 10,000 tokens, the players actually put back 7,000 of them to upgrade the ships and then just put it back into the user. So in the next season, we actually apply a multiplier, which is going to decrease over time. Maybe for season 2 or 3, the multiplier is going to be 3 or 2. Because we want to, we think that pay to earn the reward itself is actually a go-to-market strategy that for any game project to attract the initial player base. And as time goes by, more players come into our game, they're having fun with the game, will actually decrease the multiplier over time. So maybe when it comes to season 10 or season 15, the amount that we're giving out as reward, total pool, it's going to be exactly the same as the investment made of the players in the previous season. So it's going to balance out. It's not going to be unlimited emissions anymore. Because I think for any pay-to-earn game with a hyperinflationary economics model, it only going to benefit the players who are entering the game early. And whether those players are really players going to be enjoying the game, probably that's not the case. So they're actually attracting the wrong target audience. They're attracting the youth farmers rather than the real gamers who are going to be enjoying the game. And when the game gets popular, that the gamers don't say, oh, there is this game that I will try. The token price is already tanked 99%, so no one's going to really care about it. Everyone thinks that the project is a scam and all these things. So we want to avoid that. So that's why we're very upfront in saying that it's not going to be like those projects that can promise like 1,000 APR, because that is not the kind of model that will work.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of games already, and just in the last year or so, just pump up like crazy and then completely crash because of those types of gimmicks. And from what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like you guys are way more focused on the long term. I mean, I'm hearing, hey, here's what we're planning for 10 to 15 years down the road, which most games I'm hearing like, okay, maybe 5 at most is here's our token schedule for the next 5 years. And if we survive that long, we'll figure it out. So I like that you guys are already thinking, hey, how do we actually, survive for the real complete long haul of a decade or more? And, that's very hard to do as a game in general. So what's the strategy there behind that? Is it simply, hey, for a play to earn game to survive, it just needs to be fun and people will keep playing whether it's bear or bull market? Is it that simple, or is there more to it that you guys have thought through?
Yeah, I think, that's why when you think about what kind of genre of game we should build, we actually set to a point building an MMO game. Because you can see that a lot of the games that survive more than 10 years, 20 years, they actually are MMO games. Say, for example, part of our game economy is modeled after a game called EVE Online. The EVE Online is actually released back in 2003. And 18 years from now, baby, I think they still have a very active player base. So I think that DAU is still maybe around 20K or 30K. So yeah, we just think that because the reason why MMO games can have a much longer product life cycle because especially guilds really resonate with MMO games. And as long as there are guilds and teams out there, you can see that these guild members are building personal connections with one another. So they actually, a lot of the you say it's in online, they actually have these meetups in person. So they actually know each other very well. So whenever there are just people playing the game, they just call upon their friends, play with them together. And I think having those NFTs in game where people really grind for it and having ownership for the game asset is also going to lengthen the product life cycle of any game because they know that they put in the time and they know that whether they want their NFT asset to appreciate in value or for any other reason, they'll just call upon more people to play the game with them together. So I think the genre itself, as well as having NFTs in games, actually going to lengthen the product life cycle of any game out there.
Yeah, the social part of games is, vastly important. I mean, I don't know if you've had this experience, but there's many times where I've tried to quit League of Legends because it's just such a toxic game for my health, and I keep getting sucked back in because every time one of my friends says, "Hey, we need a fifth person. Do you just want to jump in for a little bit, right?" And then it's like all of a sudden I'm back into the game that I thought I'd quit. I don't know. Have you had that experience before?
Yeah, exactly. Because I used to be a pretty hardcore RTS gamer. Like, probably spend thousands of hours on games like Age of Empires. And whenever the fun part really comes to teaming up with your friend, and you know that which friend is good at what aspect. So every time you want to play a game, you're gonna look in a few people and then build a team. So that is exactly the most fun part. Because for any single player game or like many of the one versus one kind of PvP game, you don't know who's on the other side. Like you don't have this personal connection with all these people. So whenever it's very likely that you just spend maybe a few months playing the game, and after that you see that there's a cooler game come out, then immediately you're gonna jump to play the other game because you don't have any emotional attachment to those games without having your friends and all the social aspects.
Yeah, and that part is very important. So I'm curious, how is the team thinking about that already? Is there going to be things like in-game chat or voice chat, or one day are we going to be playing Imperium Empires in VR and maybe seeing each other? What are some plans you guys have?
That's really interesting. Yeah, we're gonna have in-game chat stuff through some third-party integration, and then of course there are also very sophisticated tools out there that we can already do the integration. And then, so the future, anything can happen. You can build it as a full-fledged metaverse. But of course, VR, AR-wise, it's something interesting to explore. It's just that the market is not very mature yet. Because if you think from the perspective of the hardware side of things, because I actually have been a VR player for more than 3 years. I actually have a few Oculus as well. But I really know that the challenges, if you look at the player base, how many, maybe 2% or 3% of Steam players actually own a VR headset. So there's actually a very niche market. So at the moment, we're not really thinking about plans to create that. Because all the resources required doesn't really justify that. But I think that in the future, it suits very well for a space genre as well. So as long as there are any signs of pickup in terms of the hardware installation base of VR, we'll definitely think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think it's still pretty an underdeveloped technology. But hey, one day it'd be really fun if, I can play Imperium Empires with my VR headset and I feel like I'm actually flying the spaceship. I think that would be really cool. But, obviously that's way down in the future. So let's jump back a little bit more to the now. I just want to give you a chance here. Tell me a little bit about the team behind it. I love that you guys are sharing this vision of, hey, we want to be a long-term game. We want to bring the social aspect to the MMO, a sustainable economy, all these great things. But who's the team behind this that's going to make that happen? Tell us a little bit about the team's experience and how you guys are working together.
Sure. We actually have a very experienced game development team. So game development team used to be lead developers in Animal Brands, which is one of the largest blockchain game company out there. And each of them actually have over 15 to 20 years of experience. So they developed 20, 30 games before having a really large player base. I think over 20 million downloads for all the games that they have. And so that's our game development team. And in terms of the product management side, our product manager actually used to work with Tencent. So that, of course, is the largest gaming company on earth. And he used to be kind of doing these go-to-market strategies with very popular titles like League of Legends that you mentioned before in China. So we have a team that have a lot of experience in building real games. And all of them, the best part is that all of them are very interested in Web3 games. Because having developed games for such a long time, all of them realize the problem with the traditional game development model. It's actually the Web3 model not only benefits the players, but also the developers. Because if you think from the perspective of how traditional game development and publishing work, you basically have to spend huge resources and money, like maybe 2 to 3 years, to develop a quality game without knowing whether the game is going to succeed or not. And throughout that process, like you spend all the time and resources, and after that you build out the game. You actually a lot of revenue don't really go to the game developer. They really go to these publishing platforms like Steam or App Store. Give you like 30% of the revenue, and then another 30% is also taken by the game publisher, who's going to be helping you with the marketing and go-to-market strategy. So a lot of these models really are similar to how the movie business works. That's why you can see that a lot of the popular titles that are able to earn a huge amount of revenue actually come from the AAA studios like EA or Activision, because they can integrate everything themselves. They can do the game development and publishing themselves. So they also have their own platform. So they don't have to eat up all these fees taken by these other middlemen. So that's why Web3 itself, being a decentralized world, it's also really helping to solve this problem by taking away all these middlemen. So yeah, this is something that our development team also strongly believes.
Yeah, that's really interesting because mostly, I'm a gamer, so I'm coming things up from the gamer perspective. I'm not a developer. I haven't been on any gaming team, but from what you're saying, it almost sounds like that this potential new technology with NFTs and blockchain is allowing for more games to be a bit more indie and share more of the revenue instead of these large, massive companies. Is that kind of what you're getting at there?
Yeah, because if you think about if every game that we do, we can save all these costs that are kind of taken away by the game publisher, the game publishing platform, like 60%, 70%, can actually return all these value back to the players. So I think that actually it's a true play and earn revenue model is going to work. Like it's not going to be emitting unlimited amount of tokens and then doing a Ponzi scheme that is getting just benefit the early players who get into the game, but kind of sharing the game revenue with all the players in the long term. So they are no longer taken away by all these middlemen who are really not connected to the game itself, because all of the revenue taken away by the middlemen. It's not the benefit of the players. It's going to be benefiting the game publisher, the middlemen themselves. So that's why I think that's the magic of Web3 games. It's actually you have a better way that you manage your own community, you grow your own community, and you share all the revenue that you can save with all these middlemen, just share it back to the community. I think that's really powerful for games to be on Web3.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a really interesting perspective that maybe a gamer wouldn't understand, and that's really exciting to think about. Hey, we can all benefit from this in this new space. So I'm excited for this, as you, I'm sure, and your whole team is excited for this space. So lastly, as we wrap up, I want to just let you give you a second here to brag about your game here, Imperium Empires. I know there's other interviews that we've been doing with MMOs. I know there's maybe some other space games here out in the blockchain world that's being developed and worked on. So Imperium Empires, sell me on it right here, right now. What is it going to take to set this game apart from other games that are maybe have some similar aspects to it? What will Empires do and bring to the table that might help you guys rise to the top?
Yeah, I think it's basically down to two things. So one, of course, the team to earn social aspect that I mentioned before. It's going to be really fun to play the team up with friends and then fight these epic space wars with one another. I think that could be one of our key selling points. Another one is our kind of skill to earn or win to earn strategy, which makes the game much more sustainable in the long term because every reward we're giving out is actually based upon the player's contribution to the game. And we're carefully managing the emission schedules and all these things. So we got to make sure that every season is only going to be a fixed pool rewards. And the fixed pool rewards actually going to go to the players who are most skillful. They should be rewarded for their time and effort and money they put into the game. So I think these two things really differentiate us from many of the other blockchain games out there. And of course, the quality itself, because of the content that we produce, our original content, we have a huge art team that are doing all these spatial and other NFTs. So just by just owning these assets, it's just fun to have these assets and see them in action when you're playing the game with other people, your friends. And of course, we also delivering very developing in according to the roadmap. So we, as I mentioned before, we're going to have two game modes. One is the one going to be on web or mobile, so it's going to come out very soon at the end of June. So be sure to just check this out and follow our social. And then the other one, which is going to be the PC or Mac build, it's going to come out in July. So that's going to be the really fun part if you're competitive players looking to enjoy shooting down other players that spaceship piece. Because that version can actually allow up to 20 people to try to fund one another in the same sector. So yeah, just be sure to follow our socials, our Twitter, Discord, and PG, and just get the latest updates from us.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to keeping track of you guys' progress as you guys go. I was going to ask you where can people follow along, but I think you already hit them all and shouted them all out. So I encourage anyone that's interested in this project, go ahead and follow along in all those spaces that Cliff just mentioned. And Cliff, thank you again so much for your time. Let us know when the game can be played. We'd love to do some gameplay testing here as well, and we'll keep going as you guys go along. We'll keep covering you guys and other projects as well. So thank you, Cliff, for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Cliff, so much for joining in this podcast and letting us know more about Imperium Empires. If you enjoyed this episode, then consider following along either at YouTube or one of your podcast platforms to hear other interviews from top-level NFT games. You can also go to Balthazar's website at bltzr.gg to learn more about our research about these games, our launchpad, and our upcoming public token sale. Gracias, salamat, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you over there at the next episode.